On this episode of the CJ Sweat Show, we are going to discuss Doug Pederson and his coaching genius from Sunday night. We will also discuss National Signing Day in college football, and Chris is going to bring us our college basketball top 10. This is, by the way, the last episode of the CJ Sweat Show. This is it. We're going to get to that again in just a little bit. This is the CJ Sweat Show, and we start right now. I'm not bringing the bias here. You are.
What they do up there? Brainwash?
Hey, it's not my fault that your team is terrible.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
This is just honest. I'm sorry if it hurts. Oh wait, I'm not really sorry.
Put that coffee down.
Can't stop, won't stop. Where the brakes at? I'll give him that.
This is the CJ Sweat Show. We are now live, brought to you out of Roanoke, Virginia. Thank you for being with us tonight with our last podcast. I am joined by my co-host, Chris Mason. Chris, how are you?
I'm doing great, CJ.
Good to hear from you. All right, so this is, again, our last podcast. We're getting to business real quick. Last podcast being the CJ Sweat Show. We are converting to the Virginia Sports Report that will be live in just around a month. Our plan is to debut right around the first or second week in March. So we're working on that now. We will have more details for you on that later. But for now, I'm going to open with my thoughts on the Super Bowl. Now, obviously, I came out last week and I picked the Patriots to win. I said it would be a close game. I did. Chris also picked the Patriots to win. Both of us, though, thought the Eagles would cover the point spread there. Thought this one would be close. The Eagles eventually, as you know, won. I do this every Super Bowl. I always take lots and lots of notes. And I take notes each and every quarter. I've got a lot of different ones. So I'm just going to read through you some of my notes and see if you can catch on to what I saw throughout this game. Because there's a lot of things in the Super Bowl that are just kind of like red herrings, right? It's like, I mean, like you've got the commercials, there's a lot more timeouts, the game is slower, so there's a lot of distractions from what's really happening. Here's what I noticed. First quarter, I saw Eagles are going to the option frequently. Eagles trying for home run balls early. Brady having trouble going deep across the middle. Eagles aren't focusing on defending the run at all. They're in nickel coverage at all time, going right after Brady. Second quarter, Pats have to settle for a field goal. By the way, it was a 4th and 1 instead of going with Brady, their legendary quarterback. They went with their kicker, kicked a field goal. It was juggled very badly, hits the upright, no good. Nick Foles, a lot of people, he got MVP. A lot of people are praising him. He had a hole to run for a first down. Tried throwing into coverage instead. It was incomplete in a 4th down. Thought that was a bad decision on his part. Foles hasn't had to make one tough pass all game. Guys are wide open. Foles misses wide open short pass. Eagles, second quarter, now blitzing on every play. Eagles go for it on 4th and goal. Convert it on a reverse pass that Patriots had just tried to convert, by the way, about a drive before that. And it's also a reverse pass. Chris and I mentioned this, just about every big college game, that play seems to find its way there. The Eagles went to it. Third quarter, Eagles have guys wide open all over. Eagles defense starting to struggle. They gave up on blitzing. Fourth quarter, Eagles call screen on 3rd and short. Patriots were ready for it. Pederson, who had been aggressive the whole game, goes for it on 4th down. They barely convert. And at that moment, the momentum completely shifted. Eagles went in to score, made it 38-33. Then Eagles can't convert, much needed 2-point conversion. Patriots get the ball. They're down by 5. On that drive, Patriots get a first down. And then what does Pederson do? Goes right back to the blitz he had gotten away from, forced a fumble by Brady. Pederson did the one thing that Kirby Smart didn't do. He did the one thing that the Falcons didn't do last year. He did the one thing that the Seahawks didn't do 3 years ago. He did the one thing Jacksonville didn't do just 2 weeks ago. And he did the one thing the Steelers were afraid to do several weeks ago when they faced the Steelers. He went for it. He was aggressive the entire game. He said, you know what? I don't care about having a lead. Forget the lead. We're not going to get a lead and try to hang on only for Brady to come back and win. We're going to go for everything. The interesting thing about this game on Sunday was that the first 3.5 quarters were the same exact game that we've watched the Patriots play in the past several Super Bowls. Remember that Patriots-Falcons Super Bowl last year? Falcons held the big lead and then gave it up late. Remember the Super Bowl, 2 Super Bowls before that when it was Seahawks and Patriots. Seahawks had the lead and then gave it up late. And remember the college football championship game where Georgia had a lead and gave it up. And the game before that where Oklahoma had a lead on Georgia and they gave it up. In all of those situations, the team that had the lead decided we're not going to go for it anymore. Instead, we're going to try and sit on this lead and we're going to hope they don't come back. My favorite quote of all time is, hope is never a plan. It's just simply a failed desire. And hope, listen, does not win Super Bowls. Pederson didn't rely on hope. Pederson was crafty. He was gutsy. He was aggressive. And he relied on his players to win that game. It was a complete and utter team effort. Now, Nick Foles, he was good. He was good. I wouldn't have given him MVP. I thought he was really good, though. I thought he did miss on several plays, although everybody today wants to make him their next franchise quarterback. He made some passes that were absolutely incredible, but I thought he missed on some plays. The Eagles got several breaks throughout that game. There were those 2 big non-completions in the end zone. They were essentially the same play that the Steelers were called for several weeks ago that was called incomplete against the Patriots. And I had this note in the fourth quarter. I said the NFL has almost redefined what a catch is in this game. 2 tough calls that went for the Eagles. Now everybody's saying, oh, it was an obvious catch. It was an obvious catch. But let me ask you this. Let's reverse the jerseys in that situation. If that was the Patriots and it was called a catch, would there not be an uproar right now, still on a Wednesday evening? Would we still not be talking about it? We absolutely would. So everybody wants to go and bash Collinsworth because he was questioning it too. I don't have any issue with that being a question. Because if that had been reversed and the Patriots have won on those plays, then everybody today would be saying the NFL's rigged. But those calls went for the Eagles. Now, for the record, that's not why the Patriots lost. It never was. The Patriots lost because Doug Pederson was super aggressive, and Belichick's biggest issue was several weeks ago, before the season started, he sold out on defense and went all in on offense. And that was a big mistake. The other thing people are talking about is Malcolm Butler and the benching of Malcolm Butler. Here's what I'll say about it. A lot of people don't understand it because a lot of people are like, how could you bench one of the best corners in the league when your defense has been awful? And how could you not bring him in when the Eagles have been running up and down the field on you? Because Malcolm Butler violated team rules. He was A, didn't show up for curfew, B, caught with weed. So listen, if you're going to violate Belichick and his policies, be ready for discipline. Belichick has only gotten to 8 Super Bowls for one reason, his system. And Brady's only won them for one reason, his system. So in this Super Bowl, Super Bowl 52, Belichick is not going to go against the system that's gotten him there, regardless of the player. Belichick has never carried. Belichick is unlike you, the fan, in that he is not beholden to certain players. Belichick goes all in. And I'm now seeing we were not getting any audio feed into Facebook. So hopefully that is fixed now. Belichick goes all in on the system, on the team, not the players. So the Malcolm Butler benching, I don't have one issue with. Not one at all. Again, like I said, Foles was good, not great. Don't have an issue with the Malcolm Butler benching. And I thought Pederson should have been, we gave most valuable player to Foles. I don't know how you give most valuable player to a coach. but I thought if any coach was deserving of it, it was absolutely Doug Pederson. And I thought Pederson was great the entire game. Really, I mean, absolutely phenomenal the whole game. So, I mean, like, if anybody deserved that, it was definitely him. By the way, Eagles fans, this is what kills me about Eagles fans. Eagle fans keep giving Nick Foles all this praise. They're not giving Pederson any praise right now. Here's the thing about this, Eagle fans. You're going to be great for the next 2 to 3 years. You will be great. You will not be great, though, after that, because then you're going to have to pay guys like Carson Wentz. You're going to have to pay that defensive line. You're going to have to pay your offensive line. You're going to have to pay your running backs. So once you start having to pay all these guys, you're not going to be able to afford everyone, and then you're going to start losing some of these guys. So like the Seahawks have done, where guys gotten older, they started having to pay guys. That's going to happen to you. You'll lose a coordinator. So at some point, you're not going to be as good. And then you're going to start to blame Pederson. Just remember Pederson's the reason you were here in the first place. Not many coaches can go through their star quarterback being injured in the middle of the year and make the Super Bowl. I mean, look at the Texans with Deshaun Watson, without Deshaun Watson. Completely different team. You can't do it. Colts with Andrew Luck, without Andrew Luck. Can't do it. So what Doug Pederson did was absolutely unprecedented. Here's a question, though. I'm going to ask you this, Chris. I don't think Nick Foles is great. I don't think he's a star, but I think he's a serviceable franchise quarterback in this league who could stick around and be your team's quarterback for the next 8 to 10 years. Same way I think like Kirk Cousins would be a really nice quarterback for the next 8 to 10 years. I don't think Foles is in like the upper echelon though with Carson Wentz, with Brady, with Russell Wilson, but I think I think he's okay. So the Eagles have Carson Wentz, who I think is one of the next great ones. What do you do right now with Nick Foles? Do you keep him? Do you trade him? What do you do with him?
Well, I disagree with a couple of things you said that leads into that question. I think the Eagles are going to be good for a really long time, like playoff good, and probably be in, if not win, a few more Super Bowls in the next 5 to 6 years. And the reason I say that is because Pederson has copied the Patriots' outline for this, which is not necessarily the players, it's not necessarily the coordinators, it's being a system team. So you could have plugged in any decent quarterback in the NFL, and they, with that team, would have made it to and probably won, got the same result this year. So how good is Foles, which leads into that? I don't know. I think he's about an average NFL quarterback. Could he lead a team to the playoffs next year? Yeah, I think he could do that. But I don't think that he necessarily was a success. He's not. To me, he wasn't the Super Bowl MVP. Shouldn't have got that. Great guy. Obviously, can fill in and fit in a system. So it just depends on where he ends up going. He's not going to take the Browns and put him in the playoffs. He's not going to take the Bucks and put him in the playoffs. Like, he's not that good, but if you have a team where he has some weapons, a good system in place, and a defense, he can definitely fill in some roles.
Well, you and I agree on that. Like, I don't think Foles is great, but I think he's, like what you said, he's average. Like, I'd put him, last week we had that A, B, and C quarterback list. I'd put him in the C, kind of like with the Jameis Winston, where Eli Manning is right now in his career. That's where I see Foles. And so, I mean, like, Arizona's going to go after him. That I don't buy at all. I mean, like, Arizona, you've got a defensive coordinator. You're going to bring in a Nick Foles, who has absolutely no other offensive weapons besides a decent running back, and you're going to expect that to work. That's not going to work. Like, part of the reason Nick Foles looked great on Sunday was because every single play there were guys wide open. Now, that doesn't mean Nick Foles didn't make some tough passes. He did. He made some absolutely incredible passes. But we're talking about going week to week to week of this, and teams getting more and more tape on him as a starting quarterback in this league. Don't forget, 2 years ago, he was about to retire because he wasn't good enough to be in the league. So, I mean, he looks really good with Pederson, but now he's going to bounce around the league again. So where is he going to go? If this were me, if I'm the Eagles, I would consider trading him for a really nice piece. And I would trade him now rather than later, because I think his trade value is as high as it's ever going to get. Now, Carson Wentz should be available by week 1 next year. Even if he isn't, take a week 1, week 2, week 3 loss, and that's fine. He'll come back. But if you have Nick Foles starting next year and everybody's got this tape on him and everybody's got you as a target, that's going to become a problem. I would trade him right now as soon as the offseason begins, and I would try and get a really nice draft pick, a really nice star linebacker for that, and try and help out your team in that regard. Because Carson Wentz is the star in this team. There's no doubt about that. And you won the Super Bowl with Nick Foles. It wouldn't have been close with Carson Wentz. It wouldn't have even been close. All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to take a quick break. Hopefully everybody on Facebook is able to hear us right now because we did have some audio issues there in the beginning. I apologize for that. We're going to take a quick break. On the other side of this break, I've got one story that nobody else is talking about right now. It's a big NFL story. If it happens, it would be the biggest story of the year. We've got that coming up next. This is the CJ Sweat Show, and we'll be right back.
There's nothing left to say. I know where I'm going. We're starting here today. And you know that right. You know.
Hey, it's your favorite redhead, CJ. I'm sure by now you've heard my opening rant, CJ Thoughts. Well, let me give you my thoughts on the car buying process. If you're like me, when you go to buy a car, you just want to find something reliable with decent payments. I'm not talking about going to the local guy down the street looking to make a quick sell. Buyers Auto has been around for over 100 years, and they're going to take time to ensure you're buying a car specifically fit for your needs. That's why I'll trust Buyers Auto with the purchase of my next car. Buy your auto from Buyers Auto. Welcome back, CJ Sweat Show coming at you right now live out of Roanoke, Virginia. Good to have all of you guys with us. As I mentioned earlier, Virginia Sports Report will debut in the first or second week of March. We are working on a final date for that. We want to make sure everything with that is set and good. It's going to be a really fun podcast. We're excited to bring it to you. For now, though, we are going to switch to our weekly news segment with our famous newsman, news anchor, news legend, Christopher Mason with the news.
All right, in case you missed it, the Philadelphia Eagles, not New England, New England lost. The Philadelphia Eagles beat the New England Patriots this past Sunday night with a final score of 41-33. Nick Foles was the game's MVP. Sticking with the NFL, in kind of correlation to that, Josh McDaniels, the offensive coordinator for New England, decided to turn down the head coaching job. He was all set for a news conference tomorrow night, but decided to call that off and stay with New England instead of going to become the head coach at the Indianapolis Colts. What do you think about that, CJ?
Yeah, we're gonna get into this in just a minute. I guess we can go and get into it now as part of your news. Here's my thing about, everybody's going after Josh McDaniels on this. Okay, first of all, the Colts owner has been kind of crazy for the past forever. They had Peyton Manning, never gave him any help. They have Andrew Luck, never gave him any help. And, a lot of people were saying, well, Josh McDaniels, this is going to make it really tough for him to get a job again. I'd argue, what if he went to Indianapolis and this thing didn't work? And now all of a sudden he's failed in Denver, he's failed in Indy. He's going to be labeled as offensive coordinator for life. So I think a lot of this is he didn't feel like it was a good fit. The Patriots pitched it to him, and I think the other part of this is he will be Bill Belichick's successor in New England. It is interesting that he came back and they didn't even try and get Matt Patricia back, which, by the way, after Sunday's defensive performance, I think was probably a wise decision to not bring back Patricia. I'd be very worried if I were a Lions fan today. But, this whole thing with McDaniels, I don't have any issue with what he did at all. I thought it's fine.
Oh, yeah, as far as a morality thing, no contract. Maybe I would assume he didn't have any verbal agreements, but maybe he said, yeah, I'm interested, and let's go ahead and line it up. Things fall through.
Well, and here's the other thing, too. Everybody's saying, oh, he's such a jerk for doing that. Yeah, you know who's not a jerk? Chuck Pagano, your previous coach. He was a really nice guy. So if you want to go back to nice guy, go back to Chuck Pagano. I don't mind jerks in this league because, who's a jerk in this league? Bill Belichick is known as a jerk. Kyle Shanahan is known as a jerk. Jim Harbaugh was known as I gotta have it my way type of guy. I don't have an issue with that. If jerk wins, that's great. You should kind of have at least a little bit of jerkiness in you to be in one of the most competitive industries in the world. And in the competitive industries, the NFL is the most competitive, in my opinion. So if you're going to be an NFL head coach, you had better kind of be a bit of a jerk. Well, I would be a little bit concerned about that. So I don't have any issue with what Josh McDaniels did whatsoever. I think he's making a decision for his career. And who knows, by the way? I mean, if you're given a job offer today, you're going to talk that over with your wife, right? So, I mean, maybe, last minute she's looking at it going, gosh, we got kids in school here in Connecticut. Maybe let's not move them all the way to Indiana where the schools aren't as good.
All right, continuing on with the news. Today, National Signing Day for the NCAA football. Let's see. Headline from that was Patrick Surtain was asked why he wanted to sign with Alabama as opposed to LSU, where many thought he was going. And his response was, they are the only one who wins championships. So congratulations to Patrick Surtain and his family. The University of Georgia was given the top recruiting class award, signing five-star recruits. So congratulations to the Bulldogs there as well. Moving on, NBA. LeBron James said he will not waive his no trade clause, locking him in with the Cavs for the rest of the season. And last night, Porzingis suffered a season-ending injury after he tore his ACL during a dunk in last night's game against the Bucks.
Yeah, so the Porzingis injury I thought was actually quite interesting because this, the big thing with him is that he mostly stays healthy, but now you've got a 7'3", basically a wing player, who's now suffered what's going to be, I believe, a very long-term injury. Like, he may not be back until All-Star break of next year. And, I've been kind of on this, march about LeBron to the Knicks, and I thought it was a great idea. But if Porzingis is going to be injury-prone, then it's no different than LeBron with Kyrie, and it's no different than LeBron with Dwayne Wade. You got to find somebody that you were able to rely on. And Porzingis, by the way, his brand has been, I'm the 7'3" player that can play guard. The problem with all these big guys, like Shaq, by the way, was one of them. Yao Ming, is that they're so big, they're like too big for their own good. And their ankles get really, really weak early on in their career, and it makes it really tough to recover. So, I'm sure, long-term he'll be okay. But I think as far as LeBron going to the Knicks, this does a lot of damage to any potential that had.
Finally, in the news, today is National Fettuccine Alfredo Day. What do you think about fettuccine?
Might go get some later. All right. Thank you, Chris, for the news. Appreciate that. So today is, by the way, National Signing Day in college football. So I'm going to read to you, by the way, the top 10 classes right now in college football because I think this is very interesting. And then I've got a story nobody else is talking about, which you're going to find absolutely unbelievable when I tell it to you because it makes a lot of sense, even though Chris vehemently disagrees with it. So here are your top 10 college football classes. Today it's National Signing Day, so these are official. Number 1 is Georgia. Number 2 is Ohio State. Number 3, Texas. USC 4. Penn State 5. Clemson 6th. Alabama 7th. Miami 8th. Oklahoma 9th. Notre Dame comes in at 10th. All right, so the rest of these, by the way, a couple of other notables. SEC only has 2 in the top 10. UCLA, coached by Chip Kelly, is in at 18th. Let's see, Tennessee comes in at 20th. And Michigan, by the way, in at 21st. Chris, any surprises? Here's the list. This is top 25 on it. Any surprises to you right now with these college football rankings? Because I've got one big one that I think is not a good sign for a certain program.
Yeah, it surprised me that Georgia has been able to get recruits so fast. Obviously, their success this season has led a little bit to that, but they've been able to get a bunch of good recruiting classes. And then the other big surprise is Texas in at number 3. Yeah, they get a lot of players down there, but I mean, is that team really going to benefit anytime soon from these players? I don't know.
Texas and USC don't ever surprise me. Like when we're talking college football brands, there's about 3 that I think are the big. Well, there's 4 that I think are the biggest brands in all of college football. I would say those are Ohio State, Alabama, Texas, and USC. And you could have the crappiest coach there, they will still get the best players. And like Texas, by the way, has been outcoached by Oklahoma for decades. But Texas always gets the best players. It's just the way their brand is. It's the way those schools are put together. And some of it's partly just where they're located. Ohio State's the same way. They always get some of the best players. Now, Georgia is definitely a big surprise. I tell you who the biggest surprise to me is. Alabama at 7th. This is the first time in 8 years Nick Saban has not had the number 1 class in the country. So that is definitely something to be paying attention to. And then the biggest surprise is Michigan all the way down at 21st. Harbaugh came into Michigan and immediately took national headlines. He was quirky. He was doing interviews all over the place. This year he's been noticeably quiet. And now you've got this class all the way down at 21st. And it's got me wondering, is Jim Harbaugh about a year away from leaving Michigan? And I threw this story out there earlier. Not earlier, but about a year ago, I said Jim Harbaugh leaving Michigan may happen sooner rather than later. Because he is not having the success he wanted to have. He judges himself to a very high pedestal. And B, I think he wants to be in the NFL with his brother. I don't think he wants to be coaching college football. He looks at, and he has said this before, he looks at the NFL as the highest competitive place to be in the football industry. So I'm sure he loves Michigan, but where his heart is in the NFL, and I think he's just waiting for the right spot to open. So I look at this, and I wonder, is there some complacency on behalf of Jim Harbaugh in Michigan? Because this, to me, 21st, that's a big problem. I mean, Chris, they brought Harbaugh in. They're paying him, the third most of anybody right now in the country at like $8 million a year. At some point, you got to start looking at this like, is it worth it?
Yeah, I think he's definitely worth it as a coach. He can do things that no other coaches can do. The problem is he's in a very tough conference, and there's only so much pull for good football players in that area. So he has to go to places like Virginia Tidewater area, like Florida and Texas, to recruit better players from these markets, and they're tough to recruit away from those schools that are close to home. I think they're going to be fine, though. I don't see him in the NFL so soon. I mean, obviously, I think he'd love to be back there, but where he's at now, I think he's happy with.
It is interesting. So 21st in the country, 3rd in the Big Ten behind Ohio State and Penn State. Really, the Big Ten didn't have a lot of teams in the top 40. They really only had 4: Michigan State, Michigan, Penn State, and Ohio State, and then Maryland came in at 28th. So I mean, that's not a lot there for where they should be.
Yeah, that's a surprise. Maryland at 28. Who wants to play football for Maryland?
But I do look at Michigan though, and this is low compared to the national brands. Because if you're Michigan, they are not bringing you in to beat Michigan State. That's not the reason. That's the expectation. They bring you in to compete with Texas, to compete with Penn State, to compete with Alabama, and compete with Georgia and Ohio State. you can't just be better than Michigan State. And by the way, they haven't been. And I also think Notre Dame being 10th is a problem if you're a Michigan fan. So I do think, I wonder though, is there some complacency on Harbaugh's part? Because this is starting to become a trend rather than just an occurrence. And that to me is a problem. Some other notables, local Virginia Tech fans, you came in 24th, TCU in at 25th, UVA at 63rd, and Liberty, the Flames, 135th.
Wow.
135th. By the way, your team, Louisville Cardinals, in at 32nd. It's interesting looking at these rankings because it's like, they grade these things all on some of it's got to do with the most scholarships the team's given out. Some of it's got to do with the best aggregate number between 5, 4, and 3 stars. But I'm looking at, who's getting just the best players overall. Clemson got 2 of the top 3 players. Penn State got 3 of the top 15 players. Georgia got some really good guys. USC got some good guys. The thing I don't understand is that USC also came out today and they gave Clay Helton a contract extension through 2023. And that to me makes absolutely no sense if you're USC. I mean, Chris, you watch some of these games, and I know Sam Darnold didn't look great at times, but I would put a lot of that on the coaching was absolutely abysmal, and they don't have the offensive line talent right now to support a mediocre quarterback, much less a great one. So, I look at that, and I thought a lot of Sam Darnold's struggles was due to poor coaching, was due to poor offensive line play, not because Sam Darnold isn't as good as we thought he was. And now you're going to extend Clay Helton's contract to 2023, meaning, imagine without Sam Darnold, USC comes out and you go 8-4 this year. Pressure's going to be on to get rid of Clay Helton. And so now you're going to have to pay him for the next 6 years to not do anything. That's a problem, right?
I'm not as sold on Darnold as you are. I think part of it is just because he's not what people expected him to be. So, and another thing is, a lot of times it's just based on having the right guy in the right position. So if there's good relationship between the AD and people associated with the university, maybe you don't want to have the best coach, but the best coach for the job, right? The best coach as far as managing their relationships and having a good fit for the school.
The problem, though, with that is USC is a private school. And so when you're a private school, you are basically run by boosters because they're not getting as much tax money from the state as, say, UCLA, a public institution, is. They're getting all their money from boosters. And boosters are giving money to USC in a large part because of USC football. Not even the rest of the sports, but USC football in particular. And they will put the pressure back on Lynn Swann, the athletic director at USC. If Clay Helton doesn't work, you better have a backup plan. We're going to have problems. All right, the other story that I think is just absolutely fascinating. I've put this one together a little bit. Now, there's one part of the story that I've not really put together. It's just out there. It's true. You can go look it up. And that is Aaron Rodgers is close. He has got one foot out the door in Green Bay. He and Mike McCarthy do not mesh. Now, Mike McCarthy is not getting fired by the Packers anytime soon. And interestingly enough, Mike McCarthy has alluded a number of times this past year to being sold on Brett Hundley as the future of that franchise, which I don't buy at all. But Aaron Rodgers came out a few days ago. He was on Scott Van Pelt on ESPN. And he said, this was about his quarterback coach not being retained at Green Bay. He said, my quarterback coach didn't get retained. I thought that was an interesting change, really without consulting me. There's a close connection between quarterback and quarterback coach, and that was an interesting decision. Okay, first of all, that's the most passive-aggressive quote I've ever heard in my life. Just say, I'm upset with Mike McCarthy on letting go of my quarterback coach. That really didn't make me happy because I had a good relationship with him. You can't even come out and say you're upset with it because you had a good relationship with him. You have to say that's typically a close connection between a quarterback and his coach. So I don't really want to lose my quarterback coach. I mean, like, it's just so passive aggressive. It's absolutely annoying. But this is now the third time in the past 2 months Aaron Rodgers has come out and criticized Mike McCarthy. And there was also a story, by the way, when Aaron Rodgers came back to play after that injury. He came back and played. There was a story that NFL teams might try to force Aaron Rodgers out of that contract because Green Bay violated violated the injury report rules. So they came out and they violated that protocol, and people were trying to force him out. Now that story never really did go anywhere, but who do you think put that story out? I'm going to make a suggestion that Aaron Rodgers put that story out, and a lot of other people have alluded to that as well. And so there's been a lot of news over about the past 8 to 12 weeks that Aaron Rodgers wants out of Green Bay. Now he's a California kid. He's playing in the Midwest. And he's playing for a coach that is super strict. He's not. Aaron Rodgers is flowy. He's kind of flamboyant. He's a little standoffish. He's a little weird. Mike McCarthy is rigid. He's military style. They do not mesh. Now, here's the interesting thing. We just saw who win the Super Bowl. The Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Chris, you and I would agree, right now the most talented, true talented quarterback in the NFL has to be Aaron Rodgers, right?
Oh, yeah, for sure. We both have him number one.
Yeah, I mean, like, talent-wise, and we talked about this last week, Aaron Rodgers is the best quarterback in the league. And I don't think there's any question about it. So here's the thing. Eagles just won the Super Bowl. Redskins just acquired Alex Smith. And in May, we're going to have this NFL draft where the New York Giants, the New York football Giants, hold the number 2 pick in the draft. Who are they going to get? Josh Rosen. Most likely they're going to draft Josh Rosen. And by the way, I believe they should and I like Sam Darnold. I think Josh Rosen is the next absolute star in this league. I think he's going to be absolutely incredible. So now if you start looking at the NFC quarterback picture, NFC East quarterback picture, I would say the Eagles have the best quarterback, Carson Wentz. Redskins have the second best, Alex Smith, because Alex Smith better than Dak Prescott. And although I love Josh Rosen, he is still an unknown, so I would go Alex Smith number 2. And then if the Giants take Josh Rosen, I think he's very close to Dak Prescott. So I could make an argument that Dak Prescott would be the worst quarterback in the division. And I like Prescott. Don't get me wrong, I do. But Jerry Jones is known for going after stars, and he's known for being a big hitter, and he's also known for never wanting Dan Snyder to have any type of light shine on him. And anytime the Redskins do something, the Cowboys come out and do it that much bigger. Like, the battle between Dan Snyder and Jerry Jones is like 2 middle-aged guys trying to one-up each other at their 10-year college reunion. That's what this is. That's what it's always been. And so, the Dallas Cowboys, I believe, if they were to look at this, and Aaron Rodgers saying, hey, I want to get out of here. The Cowboys right now have about $17 million in cap room that they could move around. They also have Des Bryant, who costs them $16.5 million a year, and they don't want him there anymore because his play has significantly gone down over the past year, and he has become a problem in that locker room for that team. Dak Prescott, by the way, even if they don't go after Aaron Rodgers, Dak Prescott isn't a big fan of playing with him. And Des Bryant came out and made remarks that he wanted Romo back. So, like, there is a lot of tension in that locker room between Des Bryant and everybody else. And so if they could free up that contract, now all of a sudden they've got like $36 million to spend. They could go and get, very feasibly, Aaron Rodgers for $19 million a year. Go and add 2 more nice pieces to that defense and instantly be the best team in the NFC East. Passing what the Eagles have just done in building their team, passing what the Redskins just did to get Alex Smith, passing whatever the Giants are about ready to do and get Josh Rosen. And they would be the next best team for the next 3 to 5 years. I think if you're Jerry Jones and you look at it this morning, and you look at Dak Prescott, and you look at Ezekiel Elliott, who's a really good running back, but running backs don't last in this league. Prescott's limited. You're going to have to start paying a lot of these other young guys soon. And Aaron Rodgers is trying to get out of there. I would be all over the most talented quarterback in the league. And I think this is going to become a story because I think Jerry Jones is too star-oriented to avoid at least trying for Aaron Rodgers. And I think he would do it understanding, hey, Dak, listen, we brought you in and you replaced Tony Romo. And, we let go of Romo probably sooner than he wanted. We're not going to be beholden to you either. So if there's a better opportunity out there to bring in one of the top quarterbacks in the NFL, we're going to go after it. So I'm not saying this is going to happen. Because Aaron Rodgers to the Cowboys, it sounds crazy. But when you start looking at it on paper and you start listening to what Aaron Rodgers is saying, and you look at the Cowboys roster, they've got a great offensive line. Rodgers doesn't have a good offensive line. They've got a great running back. Rodgers doesn't have a good running back. They've got a nice defensive pass rush. Rodgers doesn't have that either. You start looking at all these things. How much better would the Cowboys be with Aaron Rodgers, and how much better would he be with Dallas? I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I don't think after looking at all of this, it's the craziest potential signing that could happen this offseason or next offseason.
So now all of a sudden, since Alex Smith is a Redskin, he's all of a sudden better than Dak Prescott? You can't get away with saying that. Sit next to me and actually think I'm not going to come back and say something about
We
that.
ranked the quarterbacks last week, and I put Alex Smith ahead of Dak Prescott.
Well, you were completely wrong then, too.
Listen, Alex Smith has a better winning percentage than Dak Prescott. Alex Smith has a better quarterback rating than Dak Prescott. He's got a better touchdown to interception ratio than Dak Prescott. He's got more history in this league than Dak Prescott. I mean, Alex Smith today is better than Dak Prescott.
No.
Based on what? I mean, based on what criteria would you say Dak Prescott is better than Alex Smith?
If Dak Prescott played for the Kansas City Chiefs this past year, they would have done a ton better. They would have scored twice as many points. I mean, they would have been way better.
No, listen, Kansas
You bring
City
Alex Smith and put him on Dallas, and they don't win 6 games.
No, they would. Listen, Alex Smith on Dallas would have been right around 9 and 10 wins. They would have been close, slightly better.
There's no way. There's no way.
He's got. I mean, I don't understand what you're saying about
He's completely
Dak
immobile. He can't. Alex Smith can't move at all. Can't move.
Alex Smith is a mobile quarterback.
Okay.
I mean, Alex Smith scrambles out of the pocket all the time. He's not listen. He's not speedy. He's not like Michael Vick.
This is getting away from the fact that Aaron Rodgers will never play for. Well, I shouldn't say never. This year, will not play for the Dallas Cowboys. It's not happening. I mean, that's completely absurd.
It sounds absurd. I'm just saying, look at it from a contractual standpoint. It makes sense.
They go out.
You look at it. I mean, here's the thing: Dak Prescott is not getting you past what we just saw from the Eagles. He's not doing that.
Here's what they're going to do, Dallas. Here's what they're going to do. They're going to go out and they're going to sign 2 contracts, and it's going to happen probably relatively soon. They're going to get some ridiculous big name defensive back, corner, safety, you name it, and then they're going to bring in somebody in the middle. A nice defensive guard, maybe a nose tackle, somebody that can stuff up the middle, another big name, and then they're going to be fine on defense. Now they're going to spend a lot of money doing it, and this is going to be the year in the next 3. I mean, Dallas's window here is 3 or 4 years max. Because if not, you've got some of these big name players like Dak,
your window's
Zeke.
3 to 4 years.
Yeah, and so if they don't do this, they're completely shot.
But who else's window is 3 to 4 years max? Aaron Rodgers. And you could get him if you can drop the Bryant contract along with 2 elite defensive players. Now, I mean, listen, here's the question you have to ask yourself. And let's make sure we got our feed here. Is Aaron Rodgers a ton better than Dak Prescott? I would make that argument any day. That Aaron Rodgers is in a completely different galaxy than Dak Prescott. So if you go into it with that understanding, and you say, well, we could get Aaron Rodgers for the next 4 years, we could get 2 elite defensive players, and we're going to have the rest of these guys for the next 3 to 4 years, and that's our window. You could win a Super Bowl, maybe 2, between now and the next 4 years. Now, are you sacrificing the next 8 to 10 years potentially? Sure, but like you said, after 4 years, you're going to have to pay everybody else anyways. And the Eagles are going to be good for a while. The Giants will be hitting their stride by then. So is it really worth it to retain Dak Prescott be somewhere between 8 to 10 wins every year, assuming best case scenario, instead of going after Aaron Rodgers, who could potentially win you a couple of Super Bowls.
Okay, so Aaron Rodgers is obviously way better than Dak Prescott. That's a given. But their problem is not offensively. They get Ezekiel Elliott back. Dak can do the job. And they can be a great team. The problem is on defense. You saw it just like I did last year when Sean Lee was out with his concussions every other week. They were terrible. When he played, they were good. So they need to shore up some things where if Sean Lee's not able to come in and play, which he's got maybe 2 years left in him if he doesn't suffer another concussion between now and then. So they need to shore up some things on defense, not on the offense.
Well, that's just why they have to get rid of the Des Bryant contract. Because if you can get rid of that, he's eating up $17.5 million in cap room. He's a wide receiver. Well, wide receivers are not that valuable in the NFL.
Oh, I don't disagree with you there, and he's obviously a huge hothead. They won't do it like that. He'll continue to be on the team for the next at least 3 years. But that's not.
If I could trade him away tomorrow for a 4th round pick, I would do it. Like if Arizona's like, "Hey, we'll give you a 4th rounder for Des Bryant," I'd be like, "Sure, we'll do that." Now, because I can use a 4th rounder, get a cornerback. I can take $17.5 million, get 2 nice defensive players, and then, by the way, I can go get myself Aaron Rodgers. And I think you're if you had Aaron, I'm just saying, if you put Aaron Rodgers on that team with 2 nice defensive players, and you get rid of Des Bryant, that team is winning a Super Bowl. And I've never understood why in sports we shy away from guarantees to hold on from what we hope will be good. LeBron, people came out today and said, "Oh, nobody would trade for LeBron because nobody wants to be good for 6 months and then, he leave the team." Well, here's the alternative. You be the Charlotte Hornets for the next 10 to 15 years. Is that really ideal to be average to above average for a long period of time instead of avoiding greatness? And this is where, I look at the Redskins going after Alex Smith, and I don't think Alex Smith is great, but I kind of got it. I'm like, Kirk Cousins is not as good as Alex Smith. Alex Smith is better. Are you really going to hang on to Kirk Cousins to avoid being better for the next 3 to 4 years? And that to me, I absolutely wouldn't. So, again, I'm just saying, if you're Dallas and you look at that Super Bowl, there's no way you're coming away with a different take other than the Eagles are going to be great for the next several years. They don't have to pay anybody for a long time. They've got Carson Wentz. They've got an amazing head coach. And so if you can't equal that, if you can't also throw in there a great quarterback, then you're going to be second fiddle in the NFC East until Carson Wentz and Doug Pederson are gone. All right, so here's one discussion we wanted to get to. Chris, I gave you the task today of giving us the top 5 college basketball rivalries. And I can tell you it sounds like we're going to have one disagreement, although it's not even a disagreement. It's more of just you're wrong. So go and give it to us 5-1. Who are the best college basketball rivalries?
Starting with, do you have yours or is this just me?
This is just you.
Okay.
I'm going to give my take on it, but this is just you.
All right, number 5. Let me get it pulled up here. At number 5, I have Indiana Purdue.
Okay.
All right.
Okay, hold on. Indiana and Kentucky have to be above that, right?
Well, no, they're not really rivalry much anymore. No.
No?
No, Indiana Purdue is way much more of a rivalry.
I have to chime in on somebody for that, because if Indiana and Kentucky played each other tomorrow, that to me seems like it would be a bigger rivalry than Indiana Purdue.
It would be a surprise more so than anything because they're not playing each other anymore. Like they used to play each other every year. They would have a lot of times they would play in Freedom Hall, neutral site, and you would get the Indiana side and the Kentucky side. But there for a while, Kentucky was so dominant against Indiana. Indiana fought back a couple of years there, but it wasn't much of a rivalry.
All right, so Indiana, Purdue at 5. I'm going to 2 in-state programs.
So here's what I'm looking at for my rivalry. What makes it a good rivalry? And we'll talk as we get into this. This is what my argument will be. A good rivalry is the same reason Auburn and Alabama is the best rivalry in sports.
In sports altogether?
Yes.
Okay.
It's because their fans hate each other. They hate each other. The fans, they can't even be in the same room together a lot of times.
Yeah.
So that to me makes the best rivalry. If your fans want to kill each other when you play, that's a good rivalry.
Okay, well, they do. I mean, like, people have gone to jail for putting poisoning on Auburn trees. So
yeah, in all these stories. So Indiana, Purdue. If you ask anybody, if you ask an Indiana fan, who is your most hated team, they're going to tell you Purdue. That makes it a good rivalry.
Okay.
Next, I have Duke and UNC
at
number 4.
Oh my gosh, Christopher, why at 4?
Because their fans are wimps.
Oh, brother, you've never been to a Duke.
You can be. I've been to Raleigh Durham. I've been to Chapel Hill. Mm-hmm. They'll talk good about Duke. You go into Chapel Hill and you say, hey, what do you think about Hal Grayson? Oh, well, he's a bit of a punk, but he's playing well this year.
No, they won't.
Yes, you do. They're wimpy against each other.
Every UNC fan I know hates Grayson Allen, J.J. Redick, and Christian Chandler just as much, if not more, than any Kentucky fan.
So, I mean, everybody has a good reason to hate Allen.
Allen's amazing.
Yeah, okay. You can't even say that with a straight face. So, in at number 4, I have Duke, UNC. Number 3, Georgetown, Villanova. This is just a huge, big East
That is
battle.
a great rivalry when Georgetown's really good.
They're getting better. That's one of the reasons why I was close on this one, right? I didn't want to put it as high. It would have been maybe it would have been number 2 if Georgetown over the past 10 years.
Now Georgetown, like back in the 80s, they're the ones who had like the what was it called, like the Slamma Jamma team or whatever.
Oh yeah, and they would stomp on your face on the way down. They were just nasty.
I mean, they were a nasty team.
Yeah. Moving on, number 2, I have UCLA, Arizona. Both these teams are a little off, so that's again why I had to move it down. But these schools, and it carries over into football a lot too, just hate each other. And then finally, number 1, you could guess it from here, and I'll have a follow-up for this, is Louisville, Kentucky.
Oh my
By
gosh.
far the number 1 rivalry in college
Also, probably the
basketball.
only reason you wanted to do this topic.
No, actually, I heard this on it's rivalry week. So I was listening to this, and the guy's name's escaping me. The guy that's a big Pac-10, Pac-12 fan that talks on ESPN.
A big Pac-12 fan that talks on ESPN.
He does all the basketball games. He calls the Pac-12 the Conference of Champions.
Oh gosh, I don't know.
Is it Dockich? Might have been him. But anyway, so his take was the same as mine. And the reason is, just like we talked about before, Louisville fans and Kentucky fans cannot be in the same room together when you talk sports. I've literally been in fights over this. During a Louisville-Kentucky basketball game, Louisville fans won't. I know about 2 Louisville fans that will sit in a room with me during one of those games. And it's not because it's me. They won't sit in a room with any Kentucky fans during those games.
So here's my question. Why do we allow trashiness to define rivalries? Here's what defines a rivalry for me. UNC play at Duke on March 3rd. You want to know how expensive the crappiest ticket for that game is? $1,600 for one ticket in the nosebleed seat in Durham. Like, that's an expensive ticket.
It's not, number 1 is the place is like my high school gym was bigger than that place.
No, it's not. It seats 13,000. It's not small.
It's tiny.
It seats 13,000 people. 13,000 people are paying that much to go to a game.
Do you know how many seats Rupp Arena holds?
Well, I know it's bigger. I've been to the U of L stadium. It's bigger. I know that. The Yum Center. That's fine. But I'm telling you, $1,500 for the cheapest ticket. Like, the difference there in how expensive.
Well, and because it's one of the most wealthiest areas in the country. So $1,500 in Raleigh, Durham to a bunch of doctors.
It's toughest rivalries to get a ticket to. It is one of the highest broadcasted rivalries. Like, you watch that rivalry. Duke and UNC play each other tomorrow. And you watch the press that gets. I guarantee you the press that gets will be completely unprecedented to Kentucky and Louisville. Now, Kentucky-Louisville is a great rivalry. But when you exit the state of Kentucky, nobody cares. The Duke-UNC rivalry carries nationally, internationally. It carries. It holds weight. I mean, like, it is completely uncomparable. I mean, like, and I try not to let bias get in the way. I'm not, because honestly, best rivalry isn't a big deal to me. I don't think Redskins and Cowboys is the best NFL rivalry there is. But the Duke-UNC basketball rivalry is unprecedented compared to any other thing in college basketball. Now, if you would have said Kentucky and Indiana back in the day, that rivalry was big. Kentucky and UCLA have had a big rivalry back when they were both competing on a national stage together, and we saw that reinvigorate a little last year. But Kentucky and Louisville is really big inside the state of Kentucky. It's not in Virginia, Carolina, Florida, Texas, Michigan, Northeast. It's not anywhere. New York is going to have a huge TV rating for this game tomorrow night. Duke UNC will carry the city of New York tomorrow.
Here's my last thought on this. In 2012, Kentucky and Louisville played each other. Inside of Louisville, there was a dialysis center. Two kidney patients getting dialysis. One was a Louisville fan, the other one was a Kentucky fan. Louisville fan was sitting there talking to a friend of his about the game coming up on the day after, and the Kentucky fan starts talking trash, and they get in a big argument. One flicks the other one off, gives him the finger, and they start a fight in the dialysis center. Those are two passionate fan bases who love their team, and that is why it's the best rivalry.
Okay, and again, I agree. They're passionate fan bases. It's also trashy, and it's also only inside of the state of Kentucky. Like, here's the thing. Like, for this to be the best rivalry in sports, you have to entertain more than the people who already like your programs. Like, Auburn, Alabama was a great example. Because Auburn, Alabama, everybody's going to watch that game. Like, we've seen so many great games with those two. We know Nick Saban's great. They also have, Alabama brings in Bear Bryant, and all the tradition that comes with that. Auburn has had, Cam Newton come in before, and they've had these great teams, and they had Bo Jackson. So there's a lot of tradition there.
But there's no tradition in Kentucky or Louisville?
I didn't say there's none, but
there's a lot more tradition than there's Duke UNC.
But not that carries national weight. Duke is huge in the New York market. UNC is huge in the Chicago market. They will carry national weight.
Kentucky has the biggest fan base in all of college basketball.
And they all live in Kentucky.
No, they live nationally. Look at when
Duke
Kentucky goes to play
in China.
Look at when Kentucky goes play in Hawaii. Do you know how many Kentucky fans are there? The place is full of Kentucky fans.
Yeah, Duke went to St. John's. They lost, but the game was in St. John's, in New York, or in Madison Square Garden, where St. John's is. Duke had more fans, like 8-1. It was absolutely ridiculous. Listen, sometimes teams just travel well to certain places, but Duke has New York City. Congrats on Hawaii.
It's not about Hawaii. It's about the passion of the fan base. When Duke goes to Hawaii, you know how many fans show up? About 6.
No, that's not even true at all.
No, that is true. Look at it.
No, that's not true
I've watched
at all.
the games, and you see about 6 Duke fans. So when Kentucky
Duke
plays,
and UNC
it's full.
go. Okay, here's what we'll look at. Show me the TV rating from Kentucky and Louisville, and I guarantee you Duke and UNC probably doubles it tomorrow. At least beats it. I would say probably doubles it tomorrow.
You know why? Because Duke has to play UNC on a Thursday night. Kentucky plays Louisville on a Saturday morning.
It's a non-conference game. They could schedule that whenever they want. I've seen those non-conference contracts. It's not a big deal.
Well, and they play during the conference thing. So Louisville, Kentucky play pre-conference before basketball even gets started. People are worried about watching their football bowl games, and they're still pulling huge ratings.
We watched Kansas and UCLA to start off the season, and we watched Duke play Michigan State to start off the season. We were all excited about those games. You can draw people to a TV if you give them a good product. The thing is outside of the state of Kentucky, nobody watches Kentucky and Louisville. We could go, I guarantee you, we could go tomorrow, poll 10 people and ask them who they care about more, Duke and Carolina or Kentucky and Louisville. They would all say Duke and Carolina.
We're 3 hours from Raleigh-Durham.
We go a little bit.
If we go to Huntington, West Virginia, they're all going to say Louisville, Kentucky.
Huntington, West Virginia is not far at all from the state of Kentucky.
But it's 3 hours from Lexington.
Okay, we've gotten off topic. We go to Chicago, I guarantee you it's going to be more about this. This is why ESPN makes it their prime game, their big game. I mean, like to me, it's absolutely ridiculous to think that Louisville, Kentucky is a bigger rivalry than that. Now, if you want to say better program, I'll give you an argument that Kentucky could be a better program than Duke. I might argue against it, but I'll at least hear the argument. On this, though, I think Duke and Carolina are at an unprecedented element of college rivalries, football and basketball.
They're not even top 3 rivalries.
Oh my gosh.
Basketball.
Okay.
All right, I know you want to get to the top 10.
On that note, top 10 college basketball teams right now.
I'm going to tell you there was no changes as far as the teams in the top 10. So my top 10 teams are the same 10
so
teams. So
they're just reordered.
Last year. A little bit of a reorder. All top 3, though, stay the same.
Okay.
So I'm going to do this top to bottom this week. So UVA number 1, Purdue number 2, Villanova 3, and actually number 4 is Xavier, same as I had last week.
Okay.
Number 5 is where we start to see some change. I had Duke last week. Duke, to me, fell with that loss. It was a terrible loss against a not good team, not a team that won't even be in the tournament, and it shows a lot of issues that Duke is having. I wouldn't be surprised to see them lose tomorrow night. And UNC, to me, is a very bad team. So that should be concerning if you're a Duke fan. But I do still have them in my top 10 for now. Number 5, I have moving up is Auburn. I had them as number 6. They just took Duke's spot, basically. Moving up to number 5 into the Duke spot. Number 6, I watched these guys play last night, Michigan State. They look amazing, and somehow Izzo has these guys completely focused on this game.
Yeah.
I said a concern last week was what's going on off the court with this Larry Nassar and how widespread it is on campus. But Tom Izzo, man, what a coach. I don't know about his morality and things that are going on in that program, but can he coach basketball?
He's amazing.
Yeah. So they're my number 6. Moving up a couple spots is Cincinnati. They are just playing mean, tough, aggressive basketball. Look out for them come tournament time. I think they can make a very deep run. Texas Tech moves up from number 10 into number 8. Just moving up above of Kansas, who I had, and they took a bad loss to Oklahoma State. Mm-hmm. I believe it was. I think it was at Oklahoma State, but still, that should be a win for Kansas regardless. So number 9 is where Duke fell to. We talked about them, and then number 10 is Kansas.
I agree with you on Duke. Duke's problem, and they have done this for years, is right around early February, they have about a bad week, and they're going to have one ugly loss. I think like last year they lost to Wake Forest in the middle of the year. It's like just a weird, uncharacteristic loss. They tend, ever since Coach K has gone in on these one-and-done guys, they tend to play more to their opponent than anything else. You know, like they lose to Boston College, they lose to St. John's, yet they smoke Notre Dame, who's a good team. I think they'll look good tomorrow. I don't know that they'll win. It's at UNC. That's going to be a tough environment to play in. Tough for those young kids. But UNC's also not looked good this year either. So that's definitely a tough call. Michigan State, though, you brought them up. To me, like you and I talked about this, so your top 3 was UVA, Villanova, Purdue. But out of those 3 teams, do you see any of those 3 winning the national championship? Because they look like the obvious 3 best teams in the country right now. But we're talking about, March Madness going through a 68-team bracket. I don't know that any of those 3 teams can do it.
Well, I'll start with number 3. And I have Villanova at number 3. To me, of the top 3, they have the best chance of winning the national championship just because Jay Wright and his experience and being there and so forth. But they're very vulnerable. They've got a bunch of good guards, can handle the ball, but once they get up a couple big men that can actually, play inside and some long guards like you'll see against Duke and Kentucky, who I think both those teams come tournament time are going to be playing. They're going to have issues against long guards. Purdue, they kind of have the opposite thing. They have 2 7'2" guys. Isaac Haas, we talked about him on the show. He's an amazing player and is going to be great in the next league. But once they get against guys that can defend against him and can actually reach his shots, they're going to have some struggle. And then UVA, by far the best defensive team in the nation. but they have struggled come tournament time. So that's what gives me a little bit of anxiety over picking them to win the national championship.
Yeah, no, I had a UVA friend text me after they beat Duke a while back, and I told him, come back to me in mid-March, because that's when we'll find out, exactly what that team is made of. And I just, like we talk about these coaches with systems, like Jay Wright, I trust in the tournament because of his system. I don't trust UVA and their system come tournament time. That to me is their only problem. They try to milk the clock. It's slow offensively. And by the way, the shot clock is now at 30 seconds. We saw them last year struggle with UNC Wilmington opening round of the tournament. That to me is a big problem for UVA, because you get these teams like a UNC Wilmington, 12 or 13 seed first round, and they're going to get a 16 seed, so it'll be second round for them, an 8 or a 9 seed. They're playing with absolute reckless abandon. So they're going to come out, they're going to shoot a bunch of threes, they're going to be really aggressive defensively, and when you get UVA on their toes like that, they can't get back into games very easily. So I wonder about that come tournament time. Is that going to be a problem?
The difference they have this year compared to other years is that they can actually score the ball this year. They've improved a lot offensively and have stayed as good on defense. So I think they're a lot better as a team than they have been in the past, but there still may be some issues.
Yeah. Now, watch Kentucky play last night. They played Tennessee. Really back and forth game. Didn't end well for you, I know. But I, like you, think Kentucky is going to be ready to go come tournament time. I think a lot of this is just a process. And, like, the top part of the SEC is very good. You've got Tennessee there. Auburn's there. Florida's been good. You've got some really good teams in that conference. So it does make things difficult.
If the SEC doesn't get 8 or 9 teams in the tournament this year, it's a shame. There are some really good teams all along that conference.
But you look at Kentucky. What do you make of them right now? Why are they struggling, and how do they fix it?
Yeah, a lot of struggle. I don't know how they fix it. The problem is getting the team to play 40 minutes of basketball. I told you before the show, they can go in the same game and be the worst team in the SEC and the best team in the nation during the same game, sometimes at the same time, where they'll play great offensively or defensively and terrible vice versa. And it's a lot of just figuring out chemistry among the players, which they still haven't got figured out yet. And this team, I wouldn't be surprised to see them make a run to the Final Four. I wouldn't be surprised to see them going out the first weekend either. It could be a crapshoot come tournament time.
Yeah. Well, what I know about them is they're very athletic. That Alexander kid has got a ton of game. He's probably my favorite Kentucky player to watch. He is so athletic. And when he moves down the floor, there's nobody that can stop him.
He's the third best guard on the team, though.
Third best guard on the team?
Green and Diallo are actually better, more skilled players. When in the NBA, once they get developed a little bit, Green and Diallo will have better careers than Gilgeous Alexander.
I watched Alexander play last night, and I'm like, he completely took over a game. Ran out of steam at the end, and that's why they lost. But he became like Kentucky's going to him every single drive, and I didn't mind it at all. All right, so we will not be back next week. This was the last episode of the CJ Sweat Show. And of course, we kicked it off with our embarrassing sound problem early on. So I apologize to those of you on Facebook. If you missed it, you can catch us on iTunes and Spreaker. You can go listen on there to the full podcast. We will be back in about 1 month with our new podcast, Virginia Sports Report, which will be just college teams in the state of Virginia. We're very excited to get to it. It's going to be a lot of fun. So we will be back then. In the meantime, I hope you guys have a great night. Hope you enjoy yourself. We'll see you in a month. This is CJ Sweat.